Hello everyone and welcome to the round 3 recap of Ontario Open 2026. I started the tournament with 1 win and then 1 loss, and now I was facing a national master, and I believe he's going to get his candidate master title as well. His name is Eric Qian, a very talented junior, and I played Eric twice before this game. The first time I beat him pretty comfortably, and the second time he actually beat me pretty comfortably. I played a very bad game, but he definitely deserved to win that. So going into this game, I knew I have to take this game very seriously. I can't just show up and play some moves and win the game. So I started with e4. I knew Eric is going to go e5. I played knight f3, knight c6, and here's a very interesting nuance. So my plan for this game was to play the Scotch Gambit, which is something that I haven't played that much. I mostly play the Scotch game, but I reckon he's probably going to prepare for that. By the way, the first time I played him I played just the London system, so I didn't want to repeat that either. I want to play the Scotch Gambit with d4 takes bishop c4. But there's this one line where they go bishop c5, and it's kind of an annoying line to face. I didn't want to allow him to play like this because I actually saw a game of him playing with bishop c5. And I was like, let's start with the Italian. If he plays knight f6, which I saw he does against the Italian, then I'm going to go d4, kind of forcing him to play another line of the Scotch Gambit. I'm not sure whether he would have gone for this bishop c5 line anyways, but I just wanted to cut the amount of theory that I would need to study. So yeah, d4 was played, e takes d4, e5, d5. Obviously, like if I take, he's going to take my bishop now, so I go bishop b5, knight e4, knight takes d4. And here, the main line is bishop d7, just simply breaking this pin, and it's going to end in like bishop takes, pawn takes, and then I start some attack on the king's side. Like there are a lot of theory and nuances here, which I don't want to get into. But Eric played a very interesting move, bishop c5. So when I was studying Scotch Gambit, it was first surprising to me that this move even works, because it looks as though after knight takes c6, white wins a lot of material. Bishop takes f2 check, king f1, takes, check. Looks as though I'm winning. But the thing is, I can't really take the rook. If I take, then bishop a6 check just wins my queen by force. So I can't really go for that. I mean, knight takes c6 is still playable, like the line I showed you here. If white goes queen d3, it's still equal, but I really don't want to play like that with my king on f1 and king on f8. Like, it's such a weird position. So I decided to just go with bishop e3. Very principled approach. Eric castles. Also, bishop d7 is a line, which is, like most people who don't know theory, they play bishop d7. It's not a bad line, but it doesn't lose any material. But Eric clearly knew what he was doing. He castles, and looks as though I'm winning 2 pawns. Knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop takes c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c6, attacking the rook and the pawn on d5. And after rook b8, I take the second pawn on d5. So again, like for someone who doesn't know theory, they might think that the best they can do is to do this and win a pawn. But then white plays this nice move, knight a3, guarding the pawn on c2. And next I'm going to long castle and be up a pawn without much compensation. So correctly so, Eric goes queen e7. So now I'm up 2 pawns, but the pawn on b2 is hanging and I can't really save it. If I play a move like b3, I instantly lose the game, because after rook d8, I have to move my queen away, and then I lose this rook on a1. So I knew my stuff. I castled, and I actually have to give both pawns back. So rook takes b2. I can still go knight e3, but it's going to be a little bit passive. I didn't want to play like that. So I go knight c3, rook takes c2, and now queen d4. So far I'm still in prep. You can see that I have 1 hour and 35 minutes still left on the clock. And Eric also kind of knew what he was doing. Like, he wasn't tanking so much. He kind of probably was remembering what he needs to do. He was playing all the best moves too. So he played knight e6, attacking my queen. I can't take on a7 because my knight hangs. Now I play queen d3, hit the rook. Rook b2 comes, and now knight d5, queen c5, rook a c1, and so far I'm still in prep. Like, this is the last move I played in preparation, and I had some preparation for queen d4, which is the top engine move. I didn't go that much further. I'm also not going to reveal what I had for queen d4, but yeah, after rook a c1, I thought it's an interesting position. There's some imbalance. There's weakness on c7. There are ideas for me to go f4, f5. So there's a lot of room to try to play for the win. Eric plays queen a5. So here, I played a move which is not the best engine move, but I thought it's funny. I wanted to play it, and that's the move rook c4. So the first question I want to ask you guys, you guys can pause the video and think, what will happen if black goes bishop a6? Looks as though this is deadly, but what will happen? Yeah, if bishop a6, black loses on the spot to knight e7 check, and now I sacrifice my queen on h7, and then checkmate on h4. Very classic mating pattern here. And what I expected in the game was rook d8, and I thought after rook h4, I get some sort of an interesting attack, but in reality, after h6, I really don't have much. The best I can do is to go check and just return, threatening queen h7, and then the king goes back. It's going to be a draw. And there's a funny line as well I want to show. After rook d2, I can sacrifice my rook on h6. They can't take because of mate, and if takes, then queen h7, and this is just going to be a perpetual. Yeah, I would probably maybe play on more with queen f3, but apparently this is very dangerous. I might lose a pawn on a2 and not have any compensation for it, but I would have spent more time. But Eric plays queen d2. Another interesting idea. So now if I go knight e7 check, king h8, takes, rook h4, now this queen comes to h6 and defends against the checkmate. And at the same time, Eric wants to trade queens and get to an endgame. So I thought that this is interesting. I take, check, take the bishop, and now play rook a4. So from distance, it looks as though it's very difficult for him to hold this a7 pawn. And if I can win this cleanly, I think I'm in a very good shape. Apparently, this is not the most accurate move. The best is to play f4, make sure that my pawn on e5 is guarded, and also threaten f5. So if he takes on a2, now I go f5, and this is actually winning. Because I'm going to go rook e1 next, and then e6, and with a bishop guarding the promotion square, it's going to be so difficult for him to stop this pass pawn on the e file. But he should go g6, and now I go f5, and I open the file for my rook, putting some pressure here, and the game will just go on. Like, it's very slightly better for white, but with correct play, it's of course going to be a draw. But I think rook a4 was also interesting. Knight d4 was played, and now I go bishop b7, hitting the rook on c8 and the pawn on a7 at the same time. So initially when I went for this endgame, I saw this whole line, and I thought that he's going to go rook d8. And the whole idea is that rook takes a7 is a huge blunder. You guys can pause the video and try to think why this is a huge blunder. Yeah, because black gives this check on e2, and if king h1, then just rook d1. And now I can't really defend my rook. If I take, I'm going to get back ranked, and I'm going to lose a rook. Against rook d8, my initial idea was just to go g3, and again, keep more pressure on this pawn. I thought if he defends like this, I'm going to get some sort of pressure on the queen side, and I was happy with this. But then he can go c5, sack the pawn, and it becomes something similar to the game, which I'm going to cover now. So in the game, Eric played rook b8. After rook takes a7, I thought that after knight b5 hitting my rook, I can go rook a8, takes, and if he takes on a2 after bishop d5, it's getting a little bit scary for him. So if I win the f7 pawn, I'm going to be winning, and if he goes rook e2, now in the game my plan was f4, but apparently rook b1 is also an amazing idea to put pressure on the knight and coming down to checkmate, and this is actually completely winning for me. So correctly, so Eric decided not to go for it, play c5. And here I started spending so much time all of a sudden. I was starting to get worried. I was like, yeah, I'm up a pawn, but this pawn is just coming down the board very fast. And how can I even stop it? It was a very weird position because I started considering a lot of moves. Like, I even considered rook a4, for instance, to begin with. I thought c4 is coming, so why not go rook a4, bishop a6? But the problem is if I go rook a4, black doesn't have to do anything. Black can even go knight e2, knight c3. I think this is what scared me as well. Like, I'm never going to win this game. So it's kind of an annoying position to deal with. I even considered like different bishop squares. Obviously, I really want to go here, but this loses the bishop. And if I go here to try and bring the bishop to c4, I lose the a2 pawn. So eventually, I decided to go bishop e4. And another problem, like initially, I thought after c4, I go rook c7 and control the pawn. But the problem is after this, he can still go c3 and I can't take it because of the knight fork. So I was like, oh my god, I might even lose this game. But I was like, yeah, if the worst comes to worst, I can take on f7, I can sack my bishop for the pawn, and that should be holding with 3 extra pawns. But here Eric makes a mistake. Probably he missed that he can just go c3 after rook c7, and this rook behind the pawn is not super annoying to deal with. So he played rook c8, sacrificed the f7 pawn, and now played c4. So here I played g3. Giving my king a little bit of a room. There was another very interesting idea with pawn to e6, which I actually considered in the game. And the thing is, if he pushes the pawn, I just go e7. And there's a very cute line after king g8 where I play rook f8 check. After takes, then bishop d5, just wins the game. Rook f7, I promote. King h8, I take and promote, and that's winning. So he has to take my pawn. And now I go bishop f5, pinning the knight on e6. And if knight g5, I just play rook e7, bishop b1, and I just claim that I'm up a pawn. But this wasn't super clear to me. I didn't like it that much. So I decided to go with g3. And here he makes an inaccuracy with c3. And I will show you why. The best move was to throw this king g8, and once the rook moves away, then c3. The problem with c3 right away is that after king g2, c2, he always has these back rank problems. And you will see how these back rank problems actually hunt him down. Oh my god, I actually spoiled the result of the game. I usually don't do that, but I just realized I spoiled the result of the game. Well, anyways. Yeah. So, in this position, I made a mistake with rook c1. The only winning move, not winning, but like giving a serious advantage, is rook to d7. And the idea is he can't promote, again, like you see the back rank issues. If he promotes, I just take and checkmate on d8. And if he goes rook d1, again, bishop takes c2. And the thing is, after rook takes f1, rook takes d4, again, you see the back rank issues. The bishop is not going to be taken. Also, the rook is hanging here. And after rook e1, bishop e4, I have bishop and 3 pawns for the rook, and this should be winnable for white. In the game, I played rook c1. And I correctly saw that after rook d1, I have rook takes c2, and getting this endgame again, which happened in the game. But he had a very nice move, g6. So against g6, I saw g6 as well, and I thought after rook d7, now I have a very good position. Now I'm threatening to take on d4, take on c2, stuff like this. But he has rook f8. And all of a sudden, there's trouble on the f2 square. So now I have to take. And the thing is, I can't take on c2 with a rook. My bishop hangs. And if I take with a bishop, he's going to create this annoying pin and win my bishop next. So I have to play f3. And after check and rook c8, all of a sudden he's defending the pawn again. So I need to like give up some pawns to win the c2 pawn. So the way the game goes is like a4, a5. Like at some point he's got to go for this pawn. And we're going to get this endgame, which is holdable, but only black can actually press for more. Anyways, in the game, Eric blundered with rook d1. He was too hasty. He didn't play g6. He actually played this pretty fast. I took on c2, knight takes c2, bishop takes c2, rook e1. And now you guys can pause the video and find the best move for white. Right now, my bishop and my pawn are both hanging. e6 is the best move, which I found in the game. The thing is, he can't take my bishop because of checkmate. Again, you see these back rank issues. Now you understand why king g8 would have been an amazing move for him. But yeah, in this position, he can't also take the pawn because bishop f5, winning the exchange. I'm going to be up 2 pawns in the rook endgame. So he played h6, and now I play bishop a4. Again, he can't take because of bishop d7. And after rook 8, I just go bishop b3, and now I'm guarding all my pawns. And this should be a technical win. So Eric played rook e8. I started by paralyzing his king side. I played h4, f4, king f3. Like, I'm slowly improving my position. And here I started playing rook d7. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that my rook is more active because it's not doing much on f7. The position is so bad for black that computer always even giving up the exchange and playing rook endgame down 2 pawns. So Eric plays h5, and here's a slight moment where I made an inaccuracy. So first of all, I think instead of rook d7, maybe it was better if I had gone h5. It would not have gotten to all sorts of troubles like it did in the game. But yeah, I allowed h5, but here I had to take. So initially I was worried a little bit that after rook takes g3, my king is going to get into some sort of a mating net on the h file. I didn't like playing with my king there. But the thing is, I can go f5, and there's this very nice idea where I go e7. I was always worried to do that because of this, but then bishop e6. And all of a sudden, everything is protected, and my opponent just doesn't have any moves. If the rook moves away from the file, I go bishop f7 all the time, and if not, I can just start pushing my a-pawn. Anyways, I played king h3, king h7 was played, f5, king h6, rook f7. So initially I thought maybe f6 takes bishop c2 is an interesting idea, trying to checkmate here. But then after rook h8, I realized that I wish my rook was on f7, because now if I push e7, it cuts the connection of the rook, and the rook comes back to e8 and draws the game. But if the rook was on f7, I could go e7, and every piece is going to be stuck for my opponent. So I played rook f7 preparing that, but Eric goes rook c8 now, and stops bishop c2. So here I made a huge blunder in this position. I should have played e7 just to win the game. And I saw that. I saw e7 in the game, and I saw that after rook e8, bishop e6 wins. What worried me was rook c3, going for some sort of a perpetual against my king. So here you can pause the video and find the only winning move for white. The only winning move for white is to play bishop to d1. The only winning move. And the whole idea is that after check, king h2, rook h3, king g2, rook cg3, king f2, there's no check on f3. That bishop on d1 guards the f3 square, and that's the whole point about bishop d1. But yeah, I didn't see that, and I was a little bit worried of these rook c3 ideas, so I played f6. I was like, now rook c3 is met by rook takes g7, and if he takes on f6, I'm going to win this h5 pawn by force. I'm going to go rook f5, bishop d1, and there's no way he can guard this h5 pawn. And initially, I thought that this endgame should be winning for me, because I have bishop and 3 pawns for the rook, and I have 2 passers here, 1 passer here. But then once we started playing this endgame a little bit, I realized it's not that easy. Like, I have this weakness on g3. If I ever push the a-pawn, my bishop and the pawn are also going to become weaknesses. So I realized this is going to be very difficult. I was still not sure whether this is a draw or a win, but I was like, this is definitely not easy. So now we started shuffling a little bit. Rook e5, check, rook f2 back, rook g2, defending this pawn on g3. King g6 was played, check, king h5, check, king g6, and now I started pushing my a-pawn. I was like, I have to do something. I can't just sit here and do nothing. So Eric played rook e1, bishop e2, king f5, check, king e5, and now I played king g4. Funnily enough, I almost made a blunder with king h2 here. I actually played king h2, but my hand was still on the king, and that just loses to rook c2. So lucky for me that I didn't blunder that. I realized it in the last second. Eric played rook g1, rook f3, and here it's starting to get a little bit interesting. Computer wants him to take and says that this is going to be a draw, but it's not an easy decision to make. And of course, even if it's a draw, it's going to be very unpleasant still with 3 pawns to handle. So rook c7 was played, and now I play a5. So I played a5 missing a tactic that he saw, but it turned out to be very interesting. Apparently the better move is to just give a check, kick this king away a little bit more to the d or f file, and then go for these a5, a6 ideas, and I will show you why. The problem with a5 is that after check, check, he can take my pawn. So he wins one of the pawns back, but in return, I get my rook behind the passer, and I'm still guarding my g3 pawn. So it's still a little bit of a tricky position. Rook e4 was played, bishop f3, rook b4, rook a2, stopping the rook from giving a check. Rook a7, a6, rook b6, and here I could go bishop b7, but then he can always transfer into a rook endgame. Like bishop here, he can even take, but I thought I can give a check, but the king now gets here, and this is going to be an easy draw. I'm pretty sure he can hold this with the g-pawn especially. He's going to just do a back rank defense or even a Philidor defense. They both should work. So I decided to go bishop e2 to keep the game going. Eric plays king d6, I go g4, king c5, check, king d6, and now I start pushing my king forward and starting to push this pawn forward. So with both sides getting low on time, the game starts to become chaotic. Eric gives a check and puts the rook behind the passer, very pragmatic decision. But now my king goes forward. My king goes forward, and all of a sudden I'm trying to push this g-pawn. So he plays king e7, trying to get the king in front of the pawn, but I prevent that by playing king g6. Now if king f8, I go rook c8 check, and the king has to come back, and I'm just going to start pushing the pawn. Note that now if he goes for the rook endgame, this is going to be losing. Because now I just push my pawn to g6, and we're going to get to the famous Lucena position, where I don't want to like take that much time of the video on that, but the way it works is usually we get a position like this where black is stopping you from both sides, one side with a king, one side with a rook. The way you win is you give a check. You can't bring the king just yet because of the checks with the rook, so you play rook e4, and then when you bring the king like here, eventually you will be able to build a bridge with your rook to win the game with the g-pawn. Yeah, I don't want to like go into that in detail, but yeah, I just want to show that the rook endgames are now losing for him. So he plays rook a8, trying to give a check on g8, but I play bishop c4, stopping this rook from coming here. And all of a sudden, like, Eric is getting very low on time. He has 39 seconds on the clock, and the position is starting to become chaotic with these two pawns coming down the board. So he plays rook ff3, trying to trade a pair of rooks. I go king g7, trying to go g6 next, and now he plays rook ac3. And it's kind of unfortunate because I think he didn't see my a7 idea in this position. And the problem is now after a7, he has rook a3 back, and after bishop d5, I thought I'm winning the game, but now he has rook f5, attacking the bishop and the pawn. So the best I can do is to go a8, takes, check, and king h6, and get a rook and bishop versus rook endgame. So this endgame is still going to go on for another 50 moves. We are already on move 84. So after king g7, after rook ac3, I had another try that I could have gone for, and that's rook e2 check and rook e4. Just keep the bishop, anchor it on c4, and then maybe try to go with some g6 ideas. And the way he could have held here was to trade the rooks and bring the king to guard against this a6 pawn. But again, like, still going to be a little bit unpleasant. Maybe I have ideas like this, but I can't abandon my pawn as well with the bishop, so I can't really make that much progress. So I thought going for the rook and bishop versus rook is the best I have, and we got this endgame. So rook and bishop versus rook is theoretically a draw, and there are two drawing methods that black has. And the most famous one is actually the second rank defense, which I will show in the game. There's another method as well, which is called the Cochrane defense, where you put the rook here, the king here, and then it's basically, I just want to construct it real quickly. I'm putting the moves that are a little bit nonsensical, but I'm trying to construct the Cochrane defensive technique. So it's something like this. And you get a position like that where you pin the bishop on e4, and your kings are opposing each other like this. So the point of this defense is that if the king goes here, you go here. If the king goes there, you go here. So now whenever I move the bishop away, after the king goes here, you go here. And if I move the bishop away, now you go rook e7 and cut the rook, and you bring your king out again. And again, if the king goes here, you do something like this, and then your king gets free to run away. Anyways, Eric went for the second rank defense in the game. So we were just moving around. I activated my pieces, got the rook here. And the way the second rank defense works is this. You play rook g7. And the problem is, obviously, second rank defense is very annoying in the sense that in the sense that I can't really cut the king on the back rank easily. Oh, sorry. Again, I spoiled the game, but where were we? So I was like, how can I trick him? How can I trick him here? So I found a very interesting idea. I played bishop f5, king f7, rook b8, king e7. So I made this waiting move intentionally. So after rook h5, king e7, I can go bishop e6. And now I'm breaking his second rank defense. Kind of. Not completely. He goes king f8. And that's the whole idea of the second rank defense. Again, like if I go king f6, which looks like a winning move, he has rook f7 check. Very nice stillmating idea. And if I take, this is just going to be a stalemate. So I tried to be more tricky. I played king d6. Funnily enough, I thought rook g1 is a blunder, but apparently it still holds. Because after this, he again has another stillmating idea. I can't take the rook. Wow. Very interesting. So rook a7 was played. Rook g5. And now all of a sudden he's in trouble. Not in trouble in the sense of being losing, but it gets a little bit difficult to hold. So if he goes rook g7, now he loses to rook f5 check, king e8, and rook a5. And now there's no way to stop checkmate on a8. So again, like you need to be very careful in these rook endgames. So he gives a check correctly so, and plays king e7, check, king d8, I give a check, king e8, and now king f6. And here's a very interesting moment in the game. So you guys can pause the video and find the drawing idea for black. The drawing idea for black is to play rook to b6, keeping this rook on the 6th rank and pinning my bishop. And it's still, like, it's going to be so difficult for me to make progress because if I go here, the king just runs away from this side of the board. So this is actually holding. And he played rook a1. And in the game, I knew for a fact that this is not a good move. But I picked the wrong move to win the game. So you guys can pause the video and find the only winning idea for white in this position. Yeah, the only winning idea is to play rook d6, stopping this rook from coming to a6. Very important. You don't want the rook to come here and pin your bishop. Now you're threatening mate in 2 with bishop f7 and rook d8. So he has to give the check. Now you go bishop f5. And all he can do is to wait on the f-file. If he ever moves away from the f-file, you have bishop g6, rook d8. So he has to go here. And now you go rook d4. Very important move. Looks like a waiting move. That doesn't do anything. But after rook f1, now there's a technique called rook to the right, rook to the left. You go rook h4, threatening mate on h8. The only way to defend is king d8, but now rook to the left, rook c4, and black has to sacrifice the rook to avoid checkmate, and I will win the game. But unfortunately, I blitzed my move in 1 second, rook c7, and that gave him a route back in the game. So this also forces him to give this check. It doesn't let him to go rook a6. And I had the right idea to not allow him to go rook a6. But the problem is now he gets the d file. And when he gets the d file, the same techniques that I knew are not working anymore. He's just going to wait on the d file. If I go here, king d8, rook c4, he can always come back. It's not like the same technique is going to get me the win. So after that, I tried shuffling a little bit, maybe some bishop h5 ideas. But he gives the check, comes back. I tried to go from this side. Now he establishes this pin on the 6th rank, and all of a sudden he gets to establish the second rank defense again. I tried a little bit more. I tried moving his king all the way to the other side of the board, but he stood firm. It looks a little bit scary, but he's still holding on in this position. And eventually, at this point, we got to the 50th move. And just this rook b4 move was his 50th move. And I saw that he had it marked on his score sheet, so he would have probably claimed it anyways. So I decided just to trade the rooks. And here we agreed to a draw after 135 moves. So a little bit of a frustrating day for me because I had 2 very long games. Both of my games were last games to finish in the playing hall, and none of them the result went my way. But yeah, overall, very exciting fight. A lot to learn from. Like my endgame technique and also my display in theoretical endgames were not so great in this game, and that caused me to lose half a point. But credit to Eric, who defended this frustrating position for over 2 or 3 hours and held his own. So he definitely deserved to. He definitely deserved half a point, and credit to him. But yeah, going to the 4th round, I'm now at 1.5 out of 3, and I'll be facing a woman international master in the next round, and we will see how that one will go. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Let me know your comments about different parts of this game, the opening, the tactical sequences, the end game. There were so many twists and turns, so there's a lot to discuss in the comments. Make sure to let me know your comments in the comment section down below, and let me know as well, would you be confident holding Rook and Bishop versus Rook on increment? Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and have a good one. See you soon.